Welcome to the Recruitment Leadership Podcast, hosted by Alison Humphries. The Recruitment Leadership Podcast is here to help those in the recruitment industry gain awareness and understanding on the hot topics faced by those in the business of hiring people. In each episode, Alison Humphries is joined by a fellow expert to offer professional knowledge, insight and advice on the biggest subjects affecting recruitment businesses. It's the podcast to listen to for recruitment business frontrunners seeking expert information from industry-leading advisors. Welcome to the Recruitment Leadership Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Recruitment Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Alison Humphries. I'm delighted to have you join us again. If you're a first-time listener, then this podcast, as you'll know, is full of practical advice from all sorts of sources, experts, business owners, suppliers to the industry, who are very often leading edge in their thinking. And I am today very pleased to be joined from Germany by Konstanty Sliwowski. I'll spell that out for you at the end of the podcast so you can find Konstanty on LinkedIn or wherever you choose to pick him up. Now, Konstanty is here representing two businesses. One is the School of Hiring, and the other is Klareda, which is a tool to help end employers have better clarity about their role and organization before they even begin a selection or attraction process. Now, if you are thinking, that's not for me, I run an agency, not an end employment organization, I want you to stop and think again. This is really important. There are two reasons. Number one is that pretty much all the agency leaders I know are themselves employers, and they make a big investment in hiring their own staff. The second is that in the current market that we find ourselves in, agency leaders really need to be at the top of their game when they are talking to clients about the best way to recruit. So, if we are asking people if they could just flex on salary a little, I'm afraid that doesn't cut it. We're recording this for April 2026. Here in the UK, at least, we are about to see the full impact of the Employment Rights Act first stage rollout, which has already resulted in a substantial chilling of the hiring market as employers fear the risks of taking on more expensive employees with greater liability towards them and are slowing up on those decisions. So being able to talk authoritatively through real solutions to that with your end clients is absolutely key. And I'll hand over to Konstanty in a moment, but he has very kindly agreed a special offer for listeners to the Recruitment Leadership Podcast. It is time limited, so stay with us, and we'll be explaining to you later on in this episode how you can access that special offer. So, Konstanty, you have come at this with highly relevant experience to recruitment business owners. Why don't you talk us through how you reached this point in your career?
Alison, thanks so much for having me on the podcast, first of all. And yes, I do have a rather long history of working in the recruitment industry, having worked for recruitment industries myself until I started my own company called Kesa, which I scaled across 3 locations: London, Berlin, and Rio, actually in Brazil, where we had a sourcing team. I have then actually sold that business to Arrows Group in the UK, joined the board of Arrows Group, and was a member of the board until we actually merged Arrows Group with major players to create Major Group. After which I actually took my exit because I'd spent 20 years in the recruitment industry at that point, and I decided to focus on something that I I have been seeing as extremely relevant, and many of the listeners will realize this. Most managers are not particularly great at hiring, and
Yes.
reason for this is there is nothing in the way of education around hiring. So we learn as managers how to hire by being candidates, or if we're in the recruitment industry and we're lucky enough to interview a lot of people, like I have, some around 12 plus thousand candidates that I've interviewed, you simply learn by doing.
Hmm.
But the challenge with that is that the customers that we deal with as recruiters, as recruitment agency owners, don't have the luxury of having that many interviews. And they simply struggle with this. And unless we actually help them overcome this struggle,
Hmm.
we will be forever chasing those phantom hiring
Yeah. Now, what
processes.
you say should be ringing bells all over the place with our listenership here, because we have all worked on briefs from clients that then turned out to be completely different from the profile that they hired. We have all worked with clients who did not see promoting their opportunity as any part of the selection process. It was like they were doing a candidate a favor. We've all experienced clients who can't stick to a time frame and expect you to somehow keep resuscitating a candidate and their interest.
Magically making them appear, fall out of the
Exactly.
sky. Absolutely, yes.
Exactly. And above all, clients who walk into an interview that you have arranged and prepped without a moment's preparation themselves.
Hmm.
Now, ever since recruitment, at least in my lifetime, and this is my 41st year now in the recruitment industry, ever since I've known, recruitment has been based around two very basic tools. One is CVs, which, let's face it, cost us nothing to produce, but we all know are full of inaccuracies, if not downright lies, and don't necessarily give you the information you want and need. And perhaps more recently, there has been a shift from simply taking experience to equal capability. Yeah. As in, oh, you were a manager for 5 years, therefore you must be a good manager.
Absolutely.
So there has been a shift towards more skills-based hiring. Why don't you start there, Konstanty? I think our audience would love to hear your thoughts on why this is inadequate in 2026.
I'll backtrack a little bit. There's actually only three places, three moments where hiring breaks down: at definition, at design of engagement and assessment,
Mhm.
and at the stage of hiring. So making that hiring decision based on how we've engaged and assessed candidates. So defining, designing, or hiring. Skills based hiring is very much a shortcut, a mental shortcut. It's easy to say, I need a sales manager with 5 years experience selling B2B in fintech. We've all done it. 99.9% of job descriptions look like that. They look at skills, tasks, responsibilities, years of experience, and a job title.
Mhm.
Very easy for keyword matching. Sadly, it doesn't define or assure success. The fact that someone has keywords on their CV or on their profile, has years of experience within an industry, does not mean that they can successfully deliver the outcomes that we need them to deliver within the context of our organization. I have seen countless people being hired because they had Google on their CV and dropped into an organization that did not operate like Google, did
Mhm.
not have the support, did not have the cash, did not have the people, and fail as a result. Were they
Mhm.
bad people? Absolutely not. They were just the wrong people for that context.
Yes.
And this is why we really need to be going beyond skills-based hiring, beyond keyword matching, and actually speaking with customers about what are the outcomes that they want to achieve. What does success look like in their organization in 6 months, in 12 months, in 18 months down the line?
Mm-hmm.
How do they know that if they hire this person today, that in 6 months, they've made the right decision? How do they know that? And just last year, I trained over 300 managers
Mm-hmm.
on hiring and interviewing. And the most difficult thing for managers is not the execution of the interview. It is the articulation of what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And as recruiters, it is our job, it is our duty to help them clarify this. It is also, as recruitment business owners, our duty to have clarity on this, because otherwise we will be running in circles looking for a unicorn riding across a rainbow. It doesn't
Yes.
exist.
It's a fascinating thing. I frequently listen to recorded calls with the companies that I work with. So they're recruitment consultant staff. And what you realize is that let's imagine that they've been sent a job brief, or
Hmm.
what is casually referred to as a job spec, by an end hirer who hasn't bothered to communicate with them directly, has emailed probably to 5 agencies the same list of responsibilities and list of personal experience that they're looking to hire. Very classic behavior.
These days, generated by ChatGPT, I
Thank
might add.
you. Yeah. Anyway, the better ones will at least attempt a qualifying conversation around that. But what I routinely observe is that they're still using that job order as the starting point. In other words, they are focusing in on the detail of that, saying, well, could you increase this salary? Could we have some flexi time some flexible working arrangements in here? Would you look at someone with this alternative qualification? And actually, it takes maturity to challenge a client to say, well, hold on, stop that now. I don't want you to tell me what you think you're looking for. Let's go right back to the outcomes that you're trying to achieve. And then we'll look at the detail of what the role should be measured on. And I'll make some recommendations about what kind of profile you might be looking for. I think most of our listeners will recognize the kind of conversation that we're referring to here, and that we need to go a lot further. Now, listeners, Konstanty is going to give you a time-limited special offer towards a practical tool to support your clients and your own hiring in this context. But let's just show some of the business benefits. When we spoke previously, Konstanty, you spoke to me about one of your clients, the third largest bank in Germany,
Hmm.
and the measurable results you've had with your approach. Would you like to just talk us through some of those statistics?
So we move this customer from a skills-based hiring approach to
Mm-hmm.
an outcomes-based hiring approach.
Mm-hmm.
And the result is that over a 9-month period, their probation pass rates increased 86%.
Mm-hmm.
More than 9 out of 10 candidates are now passing probation, and probation in Germany is 6 months long.
Yeah.
In addition to this, they reduced the number of interviews that needed to happen in order to make a successful hire. We actually dropped their interview numbers by 23%. So it's less interviews for better quality hires.
Right. Which logically suggests a shorter time frame to hire as well. Yeah.
It does suggest a shorter time frame to hire. And yes, absolutely, we did shorten that time frame.
Right. Okay. So and this is from across multiple different functions that you were hiring for.
Yes. So
Um,
this was technology, product, design, user experience. So, yes. However, we have tested this methodology on close to 5,000 positions at this point
mhm.
across sectors, across seniorities, and across geographies.
Okay, right. That's very reassuring. So we know that your approach will work in multiple different scenarios and with different companies. I've always find that one of the questions that clients and hirers are often not very reliable on is about the culture of their company. It's like asking a fish, what kind of water do you swim in, isn't it? um, so perhaps you could enlighten our listeners as to the practicalities of your approach. How is it different?
The approach begins not with skills,
Mhm,
but with purpose. If you are or your client is looking to hire someone, the first question you need to ask is, why are they looking to hire? Is it because they are making a replacement hire? Is it because they need to add capacity to the team? Understanding that question, the answer to that question is critical because it used to be very simple. We either need to hire or we need to promote someone in the organization. But these days, that is not enough
mhm,
because we can create additional productivity with the headcount we have through training people on how to properly use AI.
mhm,
We can also consider that certain positions can be completely delegated to AI, completely automated. So now we need to be looking at, do we hire, do we promote, do we train to enable with AI, or do we completely delegate with AI?
mhm.
Helping customers understand that also prevents situations where we find out later on, oh, actually, we figured out how to AI this position away, or we figured out that we can promote someone, and you've just invested a month and a half of your sourcer's time into looking for candidates that are not going to get placed. Very
Mm,
painful for your business, isn't it?
it really is. Yeah. Okay. So that's the first question. And you presumably have this with a number of stakeholders around an organization because, uh, for example, let's say there was apparently a requirement for a new sales director, and the CEO may want something very different from that sales director from the finance director
Of
wants.
course.
Yeah.
Very common. This
Okay.
misalignment in what is actually the outcomes that we're hiring for
Mm,
and what is our definition of success. I even had this conversation last night
mhm,
with a customer, and they were looking to bring on a head of sales into their organization, and we were actually sitting down and defining what is a head of sales. And for one person, a head of sales is simply a very senior salesperson that goes traveling around the world and being the senior sales representative of the company. And for the other person in the room, that person needed to be an on-site manager to manage the existing sales team and improve their productivity.
right.
Very different, same job title.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, if someone's expecting them to automate sales, you've got a whole other agenda there, haven't you?
Of course.
So, yes, I've experienced this several times where, and this is what happens then is that one stakeholder says, yeah, I think this candidate should go forward for interview number two. And interviewer number two says, why on earth have they referred this person forward? You know, and but that it's all because the basic question hasn't happened at the beginning, right?
Yes.
And then what, Constantine?
So once we understand the purpose of the job, its mission,
Mhm,
we need to break it down into outcomes. So we need to break down what defines success in a specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time bound way
mhm.
over the short term. So that's 0 to 6 months, over the midterm, 6 to 12 months, and in the long term, 12 beyond.
Okay.
And once we define outcomes, if we can test someone's ability to deliver those outcomes within the business, they will by default have the skills to deliver those outcomes or have the ability to acquire those skills quickly enough to deliver those outcomes within that time frame.
Mm, okay.
So we move beyond the skills, we're going after the results.
Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier about differences in culture, and you
Yes.
use Google as an example. How do you factor that piece in? So we've got an
Mm,
interviewee here who has no direct insight into the culture of his potential new employer, other than what a manager might choose to share with him, which could be very subjective or just plain wrong. And I think we agreed earlier that someone who can achieve those outcomes in one environment might fall flat on their face in a different environment.
absolutely.
How do you factor in the issue of organizational culture?
So I factor this in through competencies. And there's two types of competencies the way I see it.
Mhm,
There's what I call core competencies, and core competencies are a reflection of how someone needs to behave, how they need to act in
mhm,
order to successfully deliver those outcomes within our current environment, our current culture.
mhm,
Those competencies actually define culture fit. So, what does team player mean in our organization right now? What does ownership mean in our organization right now? And then we have secondary competencies. These are the competencies, the behaviors that we would like someone to bring into our organization to build the culture we aspire to have.
aha, okay. And how do you help hiring organizations to reach agreement on those two issues?
Well, a good place to start is by simply asking the question. You said team
Mhm.
player. What does that mean to you?
Okay. So we're asking them to describe behaviors that good team players in that organization display. Yes?
Even examples of behaviors are good
Exactly.
enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. One of the most common issues I see, it's around undefined competencies like
Mhm.
good communication skills. Yeah.
What does that mean?
Leadership skills. And inexperienced recruiters have a tendency to assume they know what that means. And if you take good communication skills, for a lot of them, they've chosen a sales career. For a lot of them, what that means is charismatic, extrovert, yeah,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
articulate. Whereas, for that organization, it might mean accurate, detailed, yeah. Um,
Absolutely.
so very, very different, and a
Absolutely.
question well worth asking. Okay, carry
It's
on.
also one of the reasons I designed Klareda, which we're going to be talking about,
Uh-huh.
because it's very difficult for people to actually come up with those competencies and definitions of those competencies, as well as map those competencies specifically to outcomes and a job mission or a job purpose. And using AI in a very targeted way
Mhm.
can significantly help with this.
Okay.
And this is what we designed Cloretta for. But we'll
Now,
talk about that later.
so just to clarify, School of Hiring is where you are training people in effective hiring,
Yes.
and Klareda is the tool that works in tandem with that, that you supply, yeah?
So, School of Hiring is where we train on hiring and interviewing. It
Mhm,
is also where we coach and provide a safe space for people to practice those skills.
mhm,
Because one thing is to tell people, here's five different frameworks you can use to interview. It's a completely different thing to let them actually try those frameworks out in a safe space where it's not a high pressure environment where they're making a hiring decision. What Claretta does is it operationalizes that and makes it easier than what they have been doing in the past.
I know that listeners are aware that there's an offer about to be announced here. So let's move on to Klareda and exactly how it works. What inputs are required? What does it produce for the end hirer?
So Klareda is a AI, conversational AI.
Mm-hmm.
The easiest way to imagine it, it is a job intake form,
Mm-hmm.
but it is contextually aware of the business. So you can inform it about the company, the organizational structure, the culture, all of that. Don't have to, but you can. It is also designed to question you, to challenge your thinking, to challenge your logic based on the market. And it will help you define the mission of the job and articulate it, very importantly. It will then be able to suggest a breakdown of outcomes over the short term, mid-term, and long term that are specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time bound.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a conversation about those outcomes with Klareda. You can adjust them at will. It can map those outcomes to competencies, help you clarify the definition of those competencies, what they mean in your organization, so that you can create alignment either within your business or with your customers on what does communication mean in the organization, for example. And this takes literally a few minutes. You get this done in 15 minutes,
Right.
less. But once you have this, Klareda can create all the collateral you need to make effective hiring decisions. Everything from interview questions, interview question sequences, interview flows. So how many stages of interviews, what questions are asked in each interview, job descriptions, job ads, scorecards.
Mm.
All of that is generated automatically out of Klareda.
It would be very interesting, wouldn't it, to compare a short list of candidates put together on the basis of old style CV based hiring and a short list produced from a Klareda produced process with those questions and a completely different job advert, job description, and approach to interview. I wonder how different those shortlists would be, very substantially, I imagine.
What
Uh,
we have found is that job descriptions generated by Klareda, because they are outcome focused, it is a lot easier for people to understand who they need to refer. So it
Mm.
makes that question of you're speaking to a great candidate and you ask them, by the way, I'm looking for someone. And here, instead of I'm looking for someone with 5 years experience in sales and B2B,
Mhm.
say, I'm looking for someone who can sell an API integration or whatever it is within the context. And it's easier for people to understand and say, yeah, I know Bob. Bob's the guy. Or I know
Okay.
Mary. Mary knows how to do this. It's easier to make that connection. So we're finding that it's much easier to get referrals this way.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting byproduct, isn't it?
Mm.
And thinking about your example here, selling XYZ system into a customer company, the person that you hire is going to vary according to what your customer profile is, isn't it?
Mhm.
Selling into small businesses is quite different from selling into big businesses and whichever buyer you're dealing with. Okay. Right. So I think we're getting a bit of a feel for Klareda and how it supports line managers in a structured way to make the right to approach hiring in the right way, and ultimately to make the right decisions. Um, Here's one of the practical challenges. Our audience are recruiters. They
Mhm.
are external, and they can make clients aware that there are problems with their process. But how can they persuade? Just practical advice here. how can they persuade their clients to review and use a tool like Klareda to really improve it without losing a sale?
What we have seen with the recruiters that do use Klareda is that the questions that they sit down to use Klareda together with the client.
Mm-hmm.
And Klareda will prompt them with questions that they can ask the client to help the
Right.
client clarify their thinking, articulate what they want. And
Okay.
the added benefit to the client is everything that you generate as a result of that. You can provide the client with interview questions that they have never thought of before
Mm-hmm.
that will be spot on to surface the information they need. You can
Right.
provide them with a detailed job description with clear definitions of competencies that they can use to align with their peers.
Okay. Okay. That's really interesting. So it becomes part of a consultative sales process.
Absolutely, yes.
And just by doing that properly, you are absolutely differentiating yourself from other recruiters. Plus, you end up with a different job description, for want of a better word, right?
You end up with the information you need to
Yeah.
find them the right person, the person that will solve the problem that they're
Hmm.
actually hiring to solve.
Exactly. So, in our scenario of uh, arm's length client emails, 5 recruiters, we've now got 4 recruiters who are just taking the experience based requirement at face value. And all they can do is search for people with exactly that experience, right? That, by
Mhm.
definition, limits their choice, doesn't it? And
Yes.
it's certainly not going to guarantee success. As we've often said on this podcast, people hire on CVs, but they actually end up firing on behaviors more often than not. Yeah. So, no guarantees of success. And you've got no advantage over other recruiters. The one that has had the conversation with the client and Beretta is therefore hiring for a different profile and one that only they know about, them
Mhm.
and their client. Yeah.
And they're
So
solving the client's problem.
exactly. So they're at a huge advantage because there's a structure behind it rather than I found this CV. What do you think? Yeah. Okay. Right. Now we're close to timeout, to our time being up here. Is there anything else you want to add about School of Hiring or Klareda at this stage, Konstanty?
One thing I would add is remember that only 23% of managers have ever had any training around hiring.
Hmm.
And that training is usually around bias and avoiding risky situations for the company, i.e.,
Hmm.
asking illegal questions. If you're running a recruitment business, it is on you, it is on your team to help the managers that you work with make the right hiring decisions. And the best way to do that is to equip them with the tools that they need, the information that they need in order to run better hiring processes, to ask better questions, to define jobs beyond the skills, tasks, and responsibilities that actually do not define success for their businesses.
Hmm. Hmm.
Positioning yourself as a company that can help managers succeed and knows what their definition of success is the game changer. If you're still skills matching and keyword matching, your days are numbered in the age of AI because you know
They
what?
really are.
Claude can do that for me a lot faster and a lot cheaper.
Indeed. Indeed. Okay. And that's definitely a recurring theme on our podcast. So, Konstanty, you have kindly agreed to make a special offer to listeners of the Leadership Podcast. How should they go about? Could you just explain the offer and how people should go about accessing it?
So I always think that a good offer is one that I'm uncomfortable making. So I'm uncomfortable making this offer, but here it goes. I'm going to be giving anyone that reaches out to me a free month of full unlimited, unfettered access to Klareda. And after that month, if you do decide to go for an annual license, you will
Mhm.
get 20% off that annual license.
Okay. And so a recruiter can use that in all of their client conversations, yes?
Yes, they can.
Okay. Okay. So that's a very generous offer. Thank you. Is it time limited?
I am going to be limiting this till the end of May. So
Okay.
reach out to me till the end of May. There is going to be a Calendly link in the podcast that you
Mhm.
can hit, book a call with me, and I'll walk you through how this works, or
Mhm.
my team will walk you through how Klareda works. We'll set you up and you're on your way.
Okay. So to reach you, what channel would you rather people reached out to you by?
So to get access to the Klareda offer, simply hit the Calendly link in the show notes and
Okay.
you can book a call with me. Otherwise, reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's
Uh-huh.
Konstanty with a K, Konstanty, Sliwowski, Slivowowski. I'm very easily findable on LinkedIn. You can
Mhm.
also find me on YouTube at School of Hiring.
Okay. So that's School of Hiring and Klareda, Klareda. Konstanty, a fascinating presentation. Thank you for that. And I do hope that leaders of recruitment businesses will take advantage of this and at the very least explore it, and how it can transform their conversations and therefore the outcomes they get for clients and their relationship with them. So, Konstanty, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Alison. This was a pleasure.
And I have, as usual, been Alison Humphries. I'm a specialist recruitment business coach and leadership advisor. And you can reach me on alison@recruitmentleadership.co.uk. Please tune in next time. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Recruitment Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, review, and share so that others can find the podcast too. We really appreciate your support. If you have any questions about the topics covered or wish to find out more about recruitment leadership, please email alison@recruitmentleadership.co.uk, referencing the podcast. We're also on LinkedIn, where you can follow Recruitment Leadership and connect with Alison Humphries. Thank you for listening, and we hope you join us next time for another episode of the Recruitment Leadership Podcast.